ப்ராஜெக்ட் வந்து எந்த அளவுக்கு ரொம்ப இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, வைக்கம் முகமது பஷீர் வந்து ஒரு மலையாள எழுத்தாளர். அவர் வந்து பூவம் பழம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி ஒரு சிறுகதையை வந்து தமிழாக்கம் பண்ணும்போது தமிழ் சிறுகதை உலகில் வந்து பார்த்திங்கன்னா ஒரு சலனம் ஏற்பட்டுச்சு. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி மொழிபெயர்ப்பு, அதோடைய ஆதாயம், அதோடைய தாக்கம், அதோடைய பெருக்கத்தை பற்றிய ஒரு சிறு கலந்துரையாடல் உங்களுக்காக.
Hello, good morning, and thank you to Anita and to Dakshinachitra for organizing this extremely interesting and also extremely important discussion around the idea of language, around the idea of translations. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm honored to be among such distinguished panelists. I'm going to, so what I thought I would do was I would raise some questions which I think might be of interest or importance to this idea, to the subject that we are discussing. And I will request all the panelists to sort of give us your take, and we can make it into a discussion. And I'll be very happy if the audience participates freely. We don't have to wait till the end. If you think of something, please join in, and it can be a freewheeling discussion rather than a formal one. Dr. Saravanan, I thought I'd start with you simply because I'm fascinated by the new project that you've started, the whole translations project, which I came to know about through Mini. One tends to think of translation as a very pure literary exercise, but in the context of the project that you've started and the tie-up that you've entered into, how do you see translation as a tool of pedagogy, and also, more importantly, as a tool in terms of, increasing communications between cultures, between regions, and so on?
First of all, I thank Dakshinachitra and all the participants for giving chance to participate in this debate. So, translation is a tool. There is no doubt about that. So, when they introduced me, they said Dr. Saravanan belongs to Tamil Nadu Puttagam Sevai Kalakam, right? So that is not the correct translation. Okay. Actual right translation is our textbook corporation is a textbook is different from Puttagam. Puttagam is a common name for book. Textbook is Padanol. Tamil Nadu Padanol Matram Kalviyal. Seva is a Sanskrit word. We use the pure Tamil words. So in our translation, it is a policy of our organization. So Tamil Nadu Padanol மற்றும் கல்வியியல் பணிகள் கழகம். So each and every word has the meaning. Okay. So one famous writer said, what is lost in a excellent translation is the best in the original. Okay. Even an excellent translation will lose the best in the original. So translation is a tool because everybody cannot learn all languages. So translation is a alternate pathway to learn the knowledge. For example, if you take literature speaks about emotions. So we don't have chemistry, Tamil Nadu chemistry, or Andhra Pradesh chemistry, or Karnataka chemistry, or like that. French chemistry, Spanish chemistry. So, but literature we have Tamil literature, English literature, French literature, like that. So translation is the tool which takes into a common term. There is literature in Tamil, literature in English, literature in French. To a common path it leads us. Okay, that is the main importance of the translation. Nowadays translation seems to be very easy because of machine translation, but in the part of the discussion I'll come to later. So what are the drawbacks in the machine translation? Machine translation and post editing, that is the common terminology used in the nowadays by the translation agencies and translation companies. They are following a policy called machine translation post editing. So I would like to throw some light on that in the part of the discussion. So after when my turn comes again.
Thank you. Mini, I thought you could talk to the audience a little bit more about the specifics of the project, and also why you would cheer a project like this, given your understanding of the translation market, the crunch of funds, etc., the crunch of support. How do you see this as a great or a positive step forward?
Thank you. First of all, a great thank you to the institution here and to Anita and her team who came to invite us and planned it again, in collaboration with. And that's actually one of the things in translation, collaboration. You listen to this fabulous music, and I was asking Subhashri, it's like translation actually, where you have so many sound effects, thoughts, energies mixing into this wonderful fusion of art. That long tube-like thing which they used, I was wondering, is it an improvisation here? Because I've never seen it before. You see that sound effect of womb. So in translation also, some translators like Subhashri can bring the womb into the translation. About this project specifically, it's modeled on another earlier project which failed, and that's why I was so keen on this. And in any case, I had retired. This was a Malayalam university project designed by a brilliant IAS officer who was appointed the first VC of the university when it was established in 12. He called me and said, I want to do something for Malayalam literature to take it right outside, not just India but outside, and would you come and help? So I said, I'm already in a full-time job, I don't think I can. And something like this requires full-time effort. So he said, no, just come, let's just start. So we designed this thing of an advisory panel and selection of translators, and he said, and I think that's why I'm here too. He said, all these publishers are all so insecure and so stuck up, and so if I were to go to a publisher in Delhi, he'll give me a cup of tea and send me away. But because you know all of them and they trust you and you have a certain status, please help to make this link between, and this is of course government funding, the Malayalam University, and publishers are very, worried about government, working with government, because government can be very rigid. So that project ran for 3 years. We worked with OBS, with OUP, with Navayana, with Penguin, with others, and then it just failed because the Vice Chancellor retired and somebody came in his place who thought it wasn't important at all. Just at that time, I had retired from OUP, and I used to meet Dr. Saravanan's colleagues. I used to go there and say, why don't you? That was Tamil, what is Arul? Tamil program. Dr. Arul's team is Tamil promotion, is it? Yeah. And I used to go there and say, what are you doing? Why don't you fund some translations of Tamil, do a big anthology, and so on. So then he said, go and meet Dr. Saravanan. So when I went there, he was not at all impressed by me, but he was, because I didn't know Tamil, I don't know Tamil. So, but when I gave him this idea, he said, let's go and see Mr. Uday Chandran. And together we went there. There was also somebody else, I forget his name. And we put this project to them, and they said, we'll make it take it on a much bigger scale to promote Tamil, not just contemporary writing, contemporary fiction, because that's what happens. Publishers want to, we'll do fiction, non-fiction, we'll do poetry, we'll do the thing. And then he said, and just then of course COVID hit us. But we were able to assemble a group of collaborators. We now have 15 publishers working with us. And now it's become a massive project, and Mr. Uday Chandran and Dr. Saravanan called me 2 years ago and said, for another meeting, and said, now we take it beyond English. We'll go Tamil Kannada, Tamil Malayalam, Tamil Telugu, and wherever else we can find sympathetic. So I said, I simply don't know those markets, but we will find the regional editors. So we have Dr. Thomas, who worked with Indian literature, himself a distinguished translator and poet. For Malayalam, who's the anchor editor, Professor V.S. Sridhara for Kannada, and for Telugu, a very feisty publisher. She's a publisher herself, Geeta Ramaswamy, publisher, translator, editor, for Telugu. So then we took it to those regions also, and that's, Dravidam, Tisai Doram Dravidam, we've labeled it differently. And I think in about a week's time, 3 works in Tamil are going to be published in Oriya language. And 3 Oriya, there's a reciprocatory, 3 Oriya works will be translated into Tamil. As everyone knows, these things take a very, very long time. Translation, the language of languages really, because it's a third language. It takes the force of 2 languages, it develops a third language. So I'm here partly because of my intense commitment to translation and to culture and to writers and translators, And also because I feel that this is a critical time in our country's culture, educational and knowledge, program or development, where we must introduce our own works in different languages through a common language, if possible, to a multilingual educational society. I mean, both colleges, perhaps retellings in schools, because otherwise we will lose our sense of languages. So Vaishna, that's the direct answer, my honest answer to your direct question. Plus there's funding. Without funding, really, you can't do much in this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Minnie. That was lovely. I didn't know that you'd also doing Tamil. Ram, I thought Kenzaburo Oe, the Japanese writer, died recently. He was the first Japanese writer to win the Nobel for Literature. He famously said, in the context of the fact that the Japanese often think, so Japan is a tiny island nation and it is on the very edge of Asia, but the Japanese tend to think of themselves as being the center of the world. So in that context, Oe said that the best writing, the best translation, the best writing actually, he said, comes at the periphery, and that expresses the humanity of the center, is what he said. I paraphrase him, of course. You recently translated Aranya Rana stories from Tamil to English, and I wondered, how do you approach the idea of translation? Do you think of yourself as a Tamil person reading in Tamil, in the original language, as that being the center which is going into the periphery, or do you see yourself as a periphery reaching out to the center? How does that work in your head?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I've translated Ringa Ranna's stories recently, short stories, and it's soon to be published. And I see translation as, first, not as just a transaction between languages. In Tamil, of course, the Tamil translation of translation says Moriyakam or Moripeyarpu, but it's not just about language. It's about culture. It's about history, all that. Honestly, when I approached Anna's stories, I was only barely familiar with Anna's works, both political and literary. It was a learning for me too. But while I was translating it as a Tamilian with at least that little familiarity with Anna, with little closeness with Anna. And of course, thinking of whom this is going to reach, given that it's going to be written in English, I had to account for both history, the political leanings of that period. So, from Anna's period, Tamil Nadu has evolved a lot now. Our ideologies have evolved a lot now. And some of what he has written might seem a little too obvious or a little too dated. But translating Anna's ideology and his narratives involves also translating his period. So, in that sense, yeah, I worked as a Tamilan giving his ideas and his narrative to people who may not have had the luxury to read him or hear him in person. That's it.
Nice. Would you, Dr. Saravanan, also sort of address this idea of the periphery and the center, especially given the fact that in our state we are sort of fighting to make sure that the importance of Tamil is recognized across the country?
I would like to say the reverse. Okay. So, we are doing two translation projects. One is a literary project that Madam is coordinating. Another is Muttamilaringer Molipeyarpu Thittam, that is doing the technical books into Tamil. Okay. So, those who are studying through Tamil medium, they want quality textbooks in Tamil. Generally, national level textbooks, which are followed by Delhi University or Stephen's College, those books has to be translated. So, Madam has connected us with many publishers. Because of the as these books, this project was got much media attention, they were also ready to collaborate with us. So when we formed around 100 books we selected, and we formed a team of professors, and we are doing the technical translation also. Even medicine books also. For example, Elsevier is a very famous publisher, publishing medicine books for the 400 years. So they have published nearly 14,000 titles. They have published their books mainly in English, Spanish, and Japanese also, Chinese. So Tamil is the 25th language to have these books. In the recent CIBF, Chennai International Book Festival, our Honorable Tamil Nadu Chief Minister released those books in Tamil, Guidance Physiology and Grace Anatomy. These are all the two popular books for the first year medicine students. These books we translated. But while doing this translation for other subjects like physics, chemistry and all, most of the professors are doing missing translation. That's what I want to say. They just put it in Google, and we get 3 minutes, we can translate it in Google. And another thing we have to do is post-editing. After that, we have to read it out and compare with the original text. They know the subject. Then they have to edit it by word by word, line by line. Then it will take 3 hours. You can do it by one page can be Googled and translated in 3 minutes, but we have to edit it by 3 hours or 30 minutes. That you have to spend. For example, when Google translates or missing translation, we can see some funny translation, because that shows that the person didn't go through at all. They just put it into Google and send it to us. For example, the one translation, diamond is a brilliant stone. It was the word in physics textbook. The person translated, the Google translated is Vairam or Buddhisali Kal. Without knowing the context, if the professor gone through it, he might have corrected it. Okay, so it is in the end he knows that, but without going through it, he just send whatever sent in the Google he just forwarded to us. So like in medical book also, on professor candidate for surgery. So it is translating Arvi Chichikana Vetpalar. Like that, local anesthesia in medicine they are following. Local anesthesia means wherever the wound is there, they will give. General anesthesia means the common full anesthesia. The local anesthesia, Google translated it as Ullur Unarvagatri. That literally, that Orida Unarvagatri or Tada Unarvagatri. That is the technical terms we have. Already we have. From 1917 onwards, we have created a depository of technical terms. Textbook Corporation itself has contributed for the 1 lakh creation of 1 lakh technical terms. From 1960s, 1968 to 78 is the golden period in the higher education. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, former Chief Minister, Kalaignar M. Karunanidhi was the Chief Minister at that period. Nearly 900 textbooks were brought out for higher education. And at that period was the BSc and MSc were introduced through Tamil medium. At that time, nearly 1 lakh technical terms are formed. Now we have a site called Sorkuvai, SORKUVAI, sorkuvai.com. In that they have given nearly 8 lakhs terms. You can go and search Tamil to English, English to Tamil. For example, you take one word, power, which is a common word. There's different context we are using have different meaning. In physics, power means the Tamil opt word is Thiran. Thiran is the opt word because work by time, that is Thiran. But in political science, power means, power of the governor means governor udiya adhikaram. So adhikaram gra vaathe irukum, Thiran, both you will find. If Thiran, governor udiya Thiran abdina, that becomes the efficiency of the governor. It is meaningless. Okay, or it alters the meaning. So we have to use appropriate word. So even though missing translation is there, the editing, post-editing is inevitable. So that they have to go through it and so that it can reach out the periphery. We can bring out the best English material into Tamil and reach out the periphery.
Yeah. And Basically, what Dr. Saravanan says also makes us come back to the idea that post-industrialization, we have constantly sort of privileged the written text over the oral, and therefore there's been a great loss for other languages compared to the leading colonial languages like the European languages or English and so on. And if we take that further, Ganesh Devi very famously says that by the time we enter the next century, the 22nd century, apparently we might not have more than 300 languages left. So many languages will just die simply for the simply because of the absence of any kind of attention being paid to them. And you know now there's this the last speaker of this Andamanese tongue recently died, and with that person's death, that language is dead. Nobody else speaks it. So it's like a massive, yes, it was like a massive tragedy. So Minnie, how do you think translation can play a role in preserving languages? Would you like to talk?
Thank you again. Unfortunately, the publishing industry in any language that we're looking at, they naturally reach out to as many people. That's why I'm saying the educational support, interest, the academic support for translation for Indian languages is crucial if we are going to take this forward and keep our languages alive, because there's almost an eco side of interest in languages. Older writers are being neglected. That way this whole prize and award industry is actually counterproductive, because it makes everyone so excited, and publishers and translators chase only the younger writers or something published 5 years ago, 10 years ago, forgetting the older writers. But to come back to this particular thing, intra-language translation really is I think is the only bedrock on which we can build the longevity of Indian languages. English, in some ways, it's a mythical creature, because we hope also, and it is really the bridge to outside the country. But the endangered languages, like for instance, you talked about Anvita Abhi's work. You mentioned it is Anvita's work that you talked about, no? I mean that you're referring to. She spent years in short spells recording voices. She's got a book called Voices of the Deep, in which the code, the thing on the QR code also has these people talking. These are tribes that have not been interfered with for 40,000 years. So you have voices coming from that far back. Recently, I think Dr. Krishnan had written an article on how the doctor who performed vasectomies on the Baiga tribals was jailed. This was some years ago, but he wrote about it recently, because the numbers of that tribe are dwindling so much that the last speakers of that language will soon be forgotten, because the younger children, the younger tribals do not want to continue in that. And that is the other thing. You see, the attraction and the force of the world outside the tribal world is so seductive, and naturally everyone wants to move. In today's Hindu, there's a huge article which talks about the true state of tribals and how they, the loss of land, loss of culture, loss of their indigenous knowledge. Translation can form a zone where students, academics, activists, and the public in general are kept aware of what's happening, because this whole thing of publishing is urban-centered, and the endangered languages they tend to be away from, or those centers tend to be away. Even Konkani, it's written in 4 or 5 languages all along the Konkan coast. They don't have a script of their own. They can write in Malayalam and Kannada and Marathi, Devanagari. Tulu, for instance, doesn't have its own language. They write in Kannada. So these are the problems. And also, when important and significant world texts are translated into those languages, to find the words there, to find the terms there, One or two very simple examples. Maybe I'll give you those things later. But for now, this is how can translation play? So it sheer raising awareness. And that, in that sense, translators and those who work with them to promote them are in some form, some sense, language activists, really. Yeah. You have to have that zeal, otherwise your goals will not, I mean, they'll be very short-lived. You want something translated, you want to win a prize, you enter the thing, also the marketing tricks, that's not going to help the country. It's not going to help our languages. Thank you.
And one of the things that some sort of groups, organizations are doing in places like Chhattisgarh, West Bengal and so on, are that they're creating radio stations which transmit programs in Santali and in you know, those languages, which then means that so many more people are listening. A, the outside world is coming to them via their own language, and B, the language stays alive. And that, you know, we were talking in the car coming here of some of the ways in which, now here is an example, for instance, where you use the radio as a means to keep a language alive. But there is so many other things happening out there, even in popular culture. For example, there is, it's funny, but apparently, what's that? Bhojpuri. Apparently, experts did not think that Bhojpuri would have a very long life. They thought, you know, it's sort of assimilated into Hindi, and Bhojpuri they thought would die fairly soon, you know, it would be completely assimilated. Strangely enough, Bhojpuri cinema is such a multi-crore industry that the language is thriving. It's fascinating, you know, how these things happen. So, another way in which a pop culture has enabled the life of a language. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting area as such. So when we talk about death of languages in general, it is more about the death of the value the language holds for that community that matters. So it's not the language itself that dies, it is the value that it brings to that people that wanes. So hence our initiatives to resurrect Tamil, which I don't think Tamil needs in general. We still speak in Tamil. There are some simple examples we'll have to look at, and there is some dialogue that is involved here. For example, let's see, we have assimilated a lot of English words in our daily language. We say call panna, okay, missed call kudu, update item, okay. We use those English words and we use Tamil verbs along with them to make sense of them. This is how a language loses value gradually and declines. But parallelly, as we see, our translation industry or even cinema for that matter, it creates this dialogue of the value of Tamil. Like Mini mentioned earlier, language is not just a tool. We may think of language as just a tool. So what if we lose a tool? We have another tool now. That is a general tendency that is behind this decline of language. But it is a tool that it is like a key to all the language, all the knowledge base we have in our culture. Okay, so anyone who knows Tamil will be able to access the knowledge base we have gathered over several centuries. So it's not just a tool, and translation in that sense helps us use the tool to at least disseminate that knowledge into other languages in case the language declines. But that is just one way of looking at translation. Translation keeps the mother language alive. Okay, for translation to happen, people who speak that language, people who can read that language need to survive. Okay, so like Minima mentioned earlier, again, funds. Okay, and there is a lot of power politics that goes around in this whole arena of translation. And when we look at funds, more than the publishing industry, the cine industry is thriving because it reaches a lot more people. So a rhetoric like this, say, even people call it Tamil jingoism, which is fine. That rhetoric is needed in order to counter what is naturally happening, the decline of language, like I mentioned earlier. We borrow words a lot, we use them in a regular context. In order to counter that, jingoism is in one sense necessary, and popular cinema for that matter has that jingoism, it sells it really well. We are seeing a lot of youngsters getting into speaking only Tamil. The Tani Tamil Iyakam for that matter has thrived so long because of this popular artifact that we have created, that is cinema, which has enough funds and which has enough buying among people. So in that sense, translation, even in popular culture, helps in reviving languages, keeping them alive.
You want to talk a little bit in that context? We'd like to say a little bit about how OTT and the regional cinema, that whole phenomenon.
Yes, thanks to COVID, OTT has come to us. I don't know how much it has affected theatre going public, but now people who are creating or producing movies, they have another avenue to sell their movies to people directly, okay? Unlike earlier where they had to find a good producer, a distributor to send it to theatres, and given the number of theatres and the reach to people were hesitant to make movies, sell their ideologies. Okay, this is another fundamental concept we need to understand. Movies are also ways of disseminating ideologies, right? However popular, however mass-oriented a movie is. For example, in the last 3 years, we have seen the ideology around farmers find a lot of speech in movies, Tamil movies, for example. So this is another area, OTT, that has reached out to people. And one other benefit of OTT is it comes with these OTT platforms as such. It could be Prime, it could be Netflix. They have their own set of subtitlers and they have their own dubbing team, which is an even better way of disseminating your knowledge, disseminating your ideology to a larger audience. Now we are watching Spanish series here, Korean series. I never thought Korean would boom so much in India, and it has had a wide reach in Tamil Nadu, right? How is this possible? It's the more you find arenas to exhibit your ideologies and knowledge, it reaches people really well, and OTT has helped in that a lot.
Thanks, Ram. Thanks. When we were discussing this subtitling, and one of the things that Ram pointed out, and I agree with him completely, is that when you do subtitling, and say you're taking subtitling a Tamil film into English, it's never entirely faithful to the original. It's often an approximation, and we were talking about it. But it works, right? I'm watching Malayalam films, and like he says, South Korean thing is quite a thing. But this is very different, is it not, from the literary enterprise of translation, which also is important, as you said, Ram, in order to preserve a certain purity of the original language and not lose it, and therefore it is necessary to be very particular about that. But what I am interested in also is that often I find many, and I think we've spoken about this in the past, is that sometimes when you read the English translation of a Tamil story or a Telugu story, it doesn't ring really true in an English reader's ears, to an English reader's ears, and I, unfortunately, am only a reader in English. There is a loss in musicality, there is a loss in poetry. I have read the story, I've loved it, but I have not, the flow of the language has not appealed to me. And I think Ramanujan also spoke about this when he said that translation, as much as it must be true to the original, must also be true to the reader of the translated language, right? So how, and I'm going to ask both of you to respond to this, how important is that whole aesthetic function of the translation vis-a-vis the functional role of translation, and how do you see this thing playing out?
I want to add one thing. So certain languages, well, certain books, there are so many books are translated, are written about whatever things. It is not a true translation, but based on a material available in one language, and it is written in another language. For example, Pandit Jalvam sir is here. He has written a wonderful biography on Karnanidhi. So Karnanidhi, a life. So that is a nice book. So most of the documents he used was from Tamil material. But while reading that biography, as a person who is well versed in Tamil, not in English, you know, while speaking my English, you understand that how much knowledge I have in English in, from my spoken form. You might have estimated my English level. So because I am basically from a Tamil medium student, I have read a lot from Tamil. And we read selected English books only. So while reading Sar's book, I didn't find much difference while reading a Tamil book, because the things he dealt was much read in Tamil, and it is so functional translation, really a functional translation, great translation. I completed the book in 2 days. So that was the lovely translation. Okay, so certain books, certain stories, certain things are very much functional like that.
Can be done easily, yes.
Yeah.
Any your thoughts?
Yeah, if you wake me up at midnight, I'll start talking about it. Now, the thing is, the difference between literary work and, say, fiction, like poetry. We really need a poet to translate poetry, and non-fiction. This whole thing of the target language and the, for years, I thought to myself, it has to be someone who really not only knows that original work, but has read it several times, read all the material around it. And Sujit Mukherjee also used to say to me 20-30 years ago. In fact, who said it? Rushdie, I think. No. Yeah, Rushdie said about Jane Austen. Jane Austen lived in the time of Napoleonic wars. But she's not mentioned. Any of the wars, it barely finds a mention. Meenakshi Mukherjee, when she was researching Jane Austen for her PhD, read all the books that Jane Austen might have read at that time, the pulp fiction, the newspapers, to get that idea. And I too thought that this is it. And then I also met, what is his name? Is it Kumaraswamy? Who translated God of Small Things into Tamil. I'm not sure the name. I met him, and he said to me, for 1.5 years, I didn't read anything else. I read only that book. I would come home from work and read that book. And there's a particular chapter in it where Estapan, the boy twin, is put on a train. It's called Madras Mail. He said, I couldn't bring myself to translate that because I felt I was Estapan. That kind of emotion. But at the CIBF, at the Chennai Book Fair, when I was in conversation with Vivek Shanbag, Vivek just flipped this idea, this thing, strong notion I've held for years and years. He said, the resource text, you can always work with resource people. And yes, of course, I've worked with resource people to make sure that everything is. He said, the translator should be very, very flexible with the target language. And in that one moment on the stage, I thought to myself, oh, yeah, he's right. Of course, I know you have to be creative. It's not just enough to... That's the other thing. It's not enough to be just bilingual. No, you have to be very creative in that. These are discussions I've had with Subhashree for many years ago when we were both editing the website for South Asian women writers. Yeah, so in some sense, I call this the Cinderella's shoe. You think you have... And also editors like myself, we've also ruined the market in the sense we have this notion of standard English or some mythical, what the reader wants. And then there is a culture of readership in English which we have to accommodate, we have to comply. 25 years ago, I had a Telugu translator who we were wondering how to show the difference between the householder, the educated class, and the serving class, the servants. And he said, shall I use bad grammar? So I said, I don't think that's, it's too big a risk now. Maybe 20 years, one generation later, we can use bad grammar and get away with it. Drop some words, or, A and D, you drop the D, or something like that. There's lots of, especially dialogue, particularly dialogue, you can experiment and take risks. So that's the other thing is the cultural thing, and I always bring this up in my talks, in my any chance I get. The Bible translation, if you look at Bible translation, it's a translation of a translation of a translation. The English KJV, which was used by Eugene Nida when he set up the Bible Society and took the Bible into so many hundreds of languages. And his message to his translators was very clear. He said, doesn't matter about the original. Did Jesus curse a fig tree in the Gospel of Matthew? There's no fig tree in Peru. Make it a banana plant. Then in Greenland and Iceland and the northern parts, there's no such thing as a pastoral culture. It's an icy landscape. So how do you talk about the Lamb of God? So he said, you make it seal of God. It went because the people understood. And there's even more dangerous things, like in Africa, there's this line from Book of Revelation, behold, I stand at the door and knock, Christ's words. Now in Africa, in that particular region, only a thief knocks on the door because to make sure there's nobody in the house. So you can't have that. Lots of things like this you will find. So there's not just skill in the target language, but you have to be very careful about whom you're translating for. A couple of years ago, when I wanted to do simplified versions in English for schools, Indian schools, of Indian literature, it was put aside by OUP Hong Kong, who said, we have the perfect solution. We've got an Asia readers, something, something, something. All prepared by people who've never visited India, who've never lived here. Lots of mistakes. And of course, it bombed in the market. So that's another kind of translation, where you don't research your target language. Thank you.
Actually, one word I want to add. So today morning, when we were coming, so madam got a call from a very famous translator. So she asked one doubt to madam. So I am translating one text. So ஒரு கல்யாணம் அட்டெண்ட் பண்ணுறேன். So attending a marriage or attending a wedding, which is correct. So madam gave the explanation. Marriage is a contract. Okay. Wedding is a function. So you write, the opt word is wedding. She is a very popular translator. So even these kind of doubts are very common. So I want to add one more point, as he said. So update பண்றோம். So in not only in dead languages, in our Tamil language also, we want to find a new word for that. Update பண்றோம் அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு தமிழ்ல வந்து இற்றைப்படுத்துதல் அப்படின்னு ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்கு. இது வந்து சங்கம் லாங்குவேஜ்லேருந்து எடுத்தது. சங்கம் போயிட்டில் அற்றை திங்கள் அவ்வினவில் இற்றை திங்கள் இவனவில்னு பாரி மகளிர் பாட்டு வரும். அதில் வந்து இற்றைப்படுத்துதல் இன்று அப்படின்னு அர்த்தம். அது இற்றைப்படுத்துதல் அப்டேட்டட் வெர்ஷன் அப்படின்னா இற்றைப்படுத்தப்பட்ட பதிப்பு அப்படின்னு போட்டுரும். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி செவிலி அப்படிங்கிறது இப்போ நர்ஸுக்கு யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம் இல்லையா, தட் இஸ் ஃப்ரம் சங்கம் லிட்ரேச்சர். செவிலித்தாய் நற்றாயின்னு இருக்கும். அதில் வந்து செவிலிங்கிற வார்த்தை முதல்ல வந்து அப்புறம் நர்ஸுக்குங்கிற வார்த்தைக்கு பயன்படுத்தணும். இப்போ ஃபைல், கம்ப்யூட்டரில் ஃபைல்ஸ் இருக்குது, நம்ம ஃபைல்ஸ் ஆஃபீஸில் யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம், அதுக்கு கோப்பு அப்படிங்கிற வார்த்தை யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம். இந்த கோப்பு அப்படிங்கிறது வந்து சங்கம் லிட்ரேச்சரில் இருக்குது. மனவு கோப்பண்ண நன்னெடுங்கூந்தல் அப்படின்னு ஔவையார் பாட்டிலேருந்து எடுத்தது. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி we are taking the words from our old literature so that our language will be preserved. So it will be used in new sense. The old words we are obtaining from our traditional literature and we are using it in the new sense so that we can preserve the language.
Dr. Saravanan, just to take that thought ahead a little bit, do we have time or you would like to? Yeah. So just give me some signal. English, as you know, every year it updates its dictionary. Yeah. And every time it publishes its dictionary, it tells you all the foreign words it has now incorporated into English. Guru, Kejiri, Mulligatani, all of the Indian words which have gone into English and which is constantly updating itself. One sees how brilliant a formula that is to ensure survival and wide applicability. Why would Tamil not do that as well? Why would you not simply say file rather than look for a word in the Sangam literature?
So that is based on the language policy, madam. So while Caldwell wrote Comparative Grammar of Dravidian Languages, he wrote, among the Dravidian languages, Tamil is the only language that can function without the help of any other language. So that language purity, as he said, language purity movement, for example, pracharam is the common word, propaganda. So now we are using the word parapurai. So pracharam is also there, but we are giving another word, parapurai. If you can easily reach the people, you can use the word pracharam, no problem. But parapurai, the next generation will use the pure Tamil word, parapurai, like that. So in Tamil dictionary also the flexibility is there. So previously they will be very strict that the words start with laddu. Laddu and la should not be there. But in Mayyappan Tamilagaradi, by Save Subramaniam, a great Tamil scholar, in that he has introduced that words also. Laddu, which is common. Kriya Tamilagaradi, Tarkala Tamilagaradi. In that all the modern words has been incorporated. Those dictionaries also available in Tamil. We cannot say that it is not available. But it's a government policy, we have to use the pure Tamil words. It is the duty of the government to introduce that. Articholagaradi, official dictionary of the government. In that we are using only pure Tamil words. Poruppu Thurappu, for example, disclaimer, if you are seeing in any movie and all, disclaimer, they are putting the word Poruppu Thurappu. It is a pure Tamil word. So these kind of words we are introducing.
But Ram, that need not apply to pop culture. And how does Tamil respond to that? How is it behaving in the pop world?
To be honest, pop culture has played a major role in survival of standard Tamil. Okay, even until today, if you look at movie songs, they are written in standard Tamil. The protagonist may speak in colloquial Tamil, Chennai Tamil in the whole movie, but the moment a duet starts between the two protagonists, it will be in standard Tamil. Okay, so in that sense, popular arena has played a major role in the survival of standard Tamil until today. And take news, for example. News is a very popular medium. It hasn't gone down to colloquial Tamil yet because it has to reach a wider audience throughout Tamil Nadu. So in that sense, popular media has played a major role in standardization of Tamil. But like Sir said, these words, these new words, for example, Madan Karke has taken this as his mission to introduce these new words into the popular sphere. So he's coined words for coffee, chewing gum, all these everyday things, and he puts them in songs, which reaches a global audience. And coffee is Kulambi. Okay, and it's not something very new either. It comes from 18th century. Okay, it was not coffee as such. It was used for panagam earlier, but now they're using it for coffee. Mellum Gondu, it's a kind of a literal translation of chewing gum. Mellum Gondu is gum. Okay, so he's created several words like this, which reaches the audience, and people will start using them. If he creates 10 such words, at least 1 or 2 will stay in. Kopu, for example, has to reach a popular audience. You never know. It will reach through Madan Karke's lyrics soon.
Yeah, Karke is doing good thing, but all words are not created by him. For example, Kulambi was an available word in the dictionary. It is Devanaya Pavanar has created this word long back, because coffin seeds will be looks like hoof of the animal. Hoof of the animal will be that. From that the word Kulambu comes. Kulambu means hoof of the animal. The coffee seeds will be looking like that. From that he created the word. But it is not become popular. When it comes to a popular culture, film song, it is getting popular.
And here I was thinking Kapi will do. And I have to update my...
So, comparatively, 2 words were introduced, madam, for coffee, Kulambi, and tea, Tenir. Tenir became very popular. It is very, very common, it is accepted word, but it is not popular. Coffee, Kulambi is not popular as that of coffee. Coffee is popular, but Tenir is also popular. And in certain times, for example, bicycle, they created a pure Tamil word called E-Ruruli, bicycle, literal translation. It was not popular. But Midivandi is very popular. So like that, sometimes if you are we can create terms. If it is accepted by the people, it will become popular.
Is
That's
there a
all.
Tamil word for train then?
Yeah, Tamil. It is having, for example, train, we have three words. First, they used word Pukaivandi, because that time they used coal, so Pukaivandi. Then Todarvandi, now Todari. For the librarian also, first they used the word Nool Nilaya Padukavalar, long word. Then Nool Nilaya Kavalar, now Lulakar. That's the time will determine how the words will be formed.
I think one last question before I throw it open for the audience. Minnie, you started by saying something very interesting when you spoke of the program that the music that we heard before coming in, the Yar, and how that Uru is recreating instruments from the past as well as poetry from the past into music for the present, which is exactly what Minnie said. It's like a grand project of translation, you know, and in this case, you're translating the past for a present audience. I'll come back to you, Ram, because I often think of social media and that whole conversational space, you know, in Twitter and Insta and so on, as also this grand arena where translation is happening in multiple languages and tongues and concepts and cultures. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, that's okay. As we were discussing on our ride, social media is one place where consumers have become producers. Okay, so it's a unique space. We haven't seen such a thing on such a grand scale before in history. In that sense, social media has a very crucial role to play. There is this debate has been there for a very long time. Responsibility of art, right? Does art have responsibility, or does it stand alone as an aesthetic area? Similarly, social media has its own responsibility, and now the responsibility directly lies on every individual who is participating in it. Yes, there are several movements, parallel movements going on. You could be a communist, you could be a Dravidian, and you could be a Dalit at the same time. Okay, so there are different ideologies which mix together in one place. There is a lot of resistance, and in such a very active and volatile atmosphere, imagine the responsibility a user, a social media user, has to have regarding language as well. Language is merely a tool, right? But it's not just a tool anymore, because every word you use carries with it a lot of weight of every ideology you'll be following. So you could be a Dalit, communist, Dravidian, and someone else could be just a Dravidian communist who's not a Dalit. So the dialogue between the two gains significance with every word you use, okay? And hence all the explosion we are seeing in social media, cancel culture, for example. A single word used incorrectly bursts out, and there is a lot of explanation, there is a lot of resistance. This is a really good time for dialogue, I think. Okay, social media as such has created beautiful times for dialogue between people that was not there before. We used to hang out with people we knew. We used to hang out with people of similar frequency, wavelength before. Now we are just open into a huge arena where everyone can fight. This fight can take both senses, but I feel these are good times for this dialogue to happen, and these are good times for us to understand the depth of our language, which we have taken for granted. We have been using it very lightly. So in that sense, yeah, social media is a good space as long as we are aware of how we are using it.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's a lovely point to stop, you know, translation as dialogue, translation as creating this heterotopia that all of us are in. And on that note, I'll ask if there are any questions that you would like to address to our panelists.
Hello. So I have a question. So in translation, you are translating from one language to another. So what if I am a Tamil person? I understand Tamil, but I don't know, I'm not very fluent in reading. So how will I benefit when I am reading a work from another language translated to Tamil? What role does translation do in preserving a Tamil script?
So translated from other language to Tamil.
Yeah, it's translated to Tamil, but I'm not very fluent in reading. So how will I benefit the translated work?
You are not fluent in Tamil.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, so translation is not will not be much useful to you, but translation is mainly useful if you are fluent in Tamil, knowing that culture, it will be useful. For example, we are translating a Kannada novel or Telugu novel into Tamil language. To understanding their culture, it will be helpful. We are giving glossary also. So, for example, we are translating one Tamil novel into English. So, we are using one word in Tamil. Old ladies will be wearing an ornament called Pambadam. So, you cannot translate that. So, you put the word Pambadam and we will put the footnote that it is a type of ornament worn by old ladies, like that. So when a person who is reading in English, he can understand what is that. So by translation we can understand the culture of the different people. By improving language, but in that language you can read something. So as any other text, if you are reading a Tamil book, reading a translated book, both are same. There is not much difference if the translation is very good. For example, Kaz Sri was a very famous translator. He used to translate Kandekar novels in 60s, 50s and 60s, which is very popular. Kandekar is a Marathi writer. So before the Marathi novels are released, his Tamil translation will be released. Kaka Sri was very good in translating the Marathi language into Tamil. So Tamil audience read that novel than preferring the Tamil writer. Any preference was given to the translated novel than the original Tamil novels. So the kind of translation decides how the language flow, and that will help you to learn the language.
So adding to that, it's translated to Tamil. எனக்கு தமிழ் படிக்க வராது, ஆனால் வந்து யாராச்சும் அது எடுத்து சொன்னாங்கன்னா எனக்கு புரியும். ஸோ அந்த பட்சத்தில் இப்போது எனக்கு இங்கிலீஷ் வந்து நல்லா படிக்க வரும். ஸோ டிரான்ஸ்லிட்ரேஷனில் ஒர்க் பற்றி கொஞ்சம் சொல்ல முடியுமா?
ஓகே, தமிழ் உங்களுக்கு நல்லா படிக்க வராது, பட் ஆனால் யாராவது எடுத்து சொன்னால் முடியும் அப்படின்னா உங்களுக்கு வந்து டிரான்ஸ்லிட்ரேஷன் அண்ட் டிரான்ஸ்கிரியேஷன் ஜென்ரலி இப்போ நீங்கள் பண்ணும்போது ஒரு டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டட் வேர்ட்ஸ் எடுத்து சொன்னோம்னா ஜென்ரலி வந்து இப்போ வந்து கதை சொல்லிகள் அப்படின்னு இருக்காங்க. இப்போ நீங்கள் யூடியூப்லாம் வந்தப்புறம், பாப்புலர் கல்ச்சர் வந்தப்புறம் யாரும் படிக்கிறதே விட்டுட்டாங்க. பவா செல்லத்துறை இஸ் வெரி பாப்புலர் தென் ஜெயமோகன். ஜெயமோகனோட ஸ்டோரிஸ் அவர் நிறைய சொல்கிறாரு, ரைட்டா? அவர் வந்து எது வந்து அந்த கதை சொல்லிகள் மூலமாகவே இந்த கதையை நீங்கள் கேட்டுடலாம். அவங்க அந்த கதையை சொல்லும்போதே கேட்டுடலாம். அதுக்கப்புறமா நீங்கள் ஜெயமோகனுடைய நாவல் எடுத்து படிச்சிங்கன்னா உங்களுக்கு புரியும். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி நீங்கள் வந்து யூ கேன் ஏதாவது கேட்டுட்டு யாராவது சொல்கிறதுக்கு ஆள் இருக்காங்கன்னா இப்போ இருக்காங்க. இப்போ யூடியூபரால் இந்த எல்லா ஸ்டோரிஸு என்னதான் வருதோ, லிட்ரேச்சர் வருதோ, ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் தமிழ் கிளாசிக்கல் லிட்ரேச்சரை பற்றி தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா கூட சிலப்பதிகாரத்தின் கதை அப்படின்னா அரை மணி நேரத்தில் கேட்டுடலாம். இப்போ பொன்னியின் செல்வனா ஃபுல்லாகவே ஆடியோ புக்காக இருக்குது, 6 மணி நேரம், 6 hours பாம்பேலேருந்து பண்ணி போட்டிருக்காங்க. ஸோ அதை நீங்கள் ஃபுல்லாக கேட்டு போனீங்கன்னா படம் புரியும். இப்போ நிறைய பேருக்கு பொன்னியின் செல்வன் படம் பார்க்கும்போது புரியலை, ஏன்னா அவங்க பொன்னியின் செல்வன் படிக்காமல் போய் படம் பார்க்கும்போது புரியலை. அந்த ஆடியோ புக்கு கேட்டு போனவங்களுக்கு படம் புரிஞ்சது. அவங்க நிறைய பேர் கேட்டாங்க, பொன்னியின் செல்வன் புரியலை, நான் படிக்கலை, என்ன பண்ணுறது அப்படின்னு. தென் வி சஜஸ்டட் அந்த ஆடியோ புக்கு கேட்டு போங்க, தென் உங்களுக்கு யூ வில் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட். அதுக்கப்புறம் கேட்டு படம் பார்த்துட்டு இப்போ வந்து பொன்னியின் செல்வன் ஒரிஜினல் வாங்கி படிச்சுட்டாங்க. ஸோ தென் தே அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பெட்டர். ஸோ அப்போ வந்து புது டேர்ம்ஸும் உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சுக்கும். உங்களுடைய லாங்குவேஜையும் நீங்கள் இம்ப்ரூவ் பண்ணிக்கலாம், அதில் உள்ள வார்த்தைகள் அதெல்லாம் நீங்கள் இம்ப்ரூவ் பண்ணிக்கலாம். டிஃப்ரெண்ட் டைப் ஆஃப் ரைட்டர்ஸ், உங்களுக்கு எந்த ரைட்டர் சூட் ஆகிறாருன்னு பார்க்கணும். அந்த ரைட்டருடைய லாங்குவேஜ் வந்து உங்களுக்கு அந்த வேவ் லெங்க்த்தோட சூட் ஆகும். இப்போ அவர் சொன்ன மாதிரி சில பேர் வந்து இந்த பர்டிகுலராக ஃபஸ்ட்டு, அதாவது பைட்ஸ்ன்னு சொல்லுவோம் இல்லையா, முதல்ல நம்மளை இழுக்கணும் லைப்ரரியில் நாங்கள் வந்து என்னென்ன புக்கு வாங்கலாம் அப்படின்னு தீர்மானம் பண்ணும்போது ஒன்லி ஒரு சீரியஸ் லிட்ரேச்சர் மட்டும்தான் வாங்கலாமா அல்லது பல்க் ஃபிக்ஷன் வாங்கலாமா அப்படின்னா பல்க் ஃபிக்ஷன் கண்டிப்பாக வாங்கணும். ஏன்னா பல்க் ஃபிக்ஷன் படித்தா தான் உங்கள் முதல்ல ஒரு க்ரைம் நாவல் படிக்கிறீங்க, ஒரு சாதாரண ரைட்டருடைய நாவல் படிக்கிறீங்கன்னா தான் உங்களுக்கு அந்த வேர்ட்ஸ்லாம் ஃபெமிலியர் ஆகும். அது இங்கிலீஷில் நம்ம எவ்ரிடே நம்மளுடைய லாங்குவேஜில் இருக்கும், அதில் ஒரு இது இருக்கும். ஒரு ஃபஸ்ட் ரீடருக்கு தட் வில் பி ஒரு ஈஸி டு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் த கிராஸ்ப் த லாங்குவேஜ். தென் அதுக்கப்புறமா நீங்கள் அதுலேருந்து வேறு நாவல் சீரியஸ் லிட்ரேச்சர் அது மாதிரி மூவ் ஆவீங்க. யூ ஹவ் டு சூஸ் யுவர் ரைட்டர். நீங்கள் எந்த ரைட்டரை சூஸ் பண்ணால் உங்களுக்கு வந்து அந்த லாங்குவேஜ் வந்து ஈஸியாக இருக்கும் அப்படின்ட்டு. எடுத்த உடனே கஷ்டமான ஒரு ரைட்டர் எடுத்துகிட்டு அப்பா எனக்கு இந்த லாங்குவேஜே கஷ்டம்னு முடிவு பண்ணிடக்கூடாது. ஸோ உங்களுக்கான ரைட்டரை நீங்கள் முடிவு பண்ணிட்டு யார் மூலமாக அதுக்கு உங்களுக்கு சஜஷன் தேவை. நீங்கள் எப்படி இந்த இவரை படிச்சுட்டு இவரை படித்தா நல்லாயிருக்கும். யூஸ்வலி ரைட்டர் சுஜாதா யூஸ் டு கிவ் ஹிஸ் ரைட்டிங்ஸ் லைக் தட். இதை படிங்க அதுக்கப்புறமா இவரை படிங்க, எடுத்தோடனே இவரை படிச்சிடாதீங்க, நீங்கள் படிக்கிறதே விட்டுருவீங்க அப்படின்னு சொல்லி ஹி வில் கிவ் த ஒப்பீனியன் லைக் தட்டா. அந்த மாதிரி நீங்கள் படிக்கலாம் ரைட்டா. புதுமை பித்தன் வந்து 1940s எழுதினாலும் இப்போ படித்தாலும் நல்லாயிருக்கும். அண்ணாவுடைய ஸ்டோரிஸ் அப்படி தான். வேலை போச்சுங்கிற ஸ்டோரி இப்போ படித்தாலும் நல்லாயிருக்கும். நீங்கள் அந்த வேலை போச்சுங்கிற ஸ்டோரியில் உள்ள காமெடி தான் அப்படியே எடுத்து அந்த நண்பன் நினைக்கிறேன் அந்த படத்தில் யூஸ் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க. டிஃபிகல்ட் டு டிரான்ஸ்லேட் அந்த ஸ்டோரி. அந்த நண்பன் படத்தில் அதை யூஸ் பண்ணிருக்க காமெடி எல்லாமே அந்த வேலை போச்சுங்கிற அண்ணாவோட ஸ்டோரியில் உள்ளது. நாங்கள் படிக்கும்போது 12th ஸ்டாண்டர்டில் எங்களுக்கு பாடமாக இருந்துச்சு வேலை போச்சுங்கிற அண்ணாவோட ஸ்டோரி. இந்த நண்பன் படத்தில் காமனாக யூஸ் பண்ணும்போது இப்போ அதை டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுறது கஷ்டமாக இருக்குண்ணா. அது வந்து தமிழில் இருக்கக்கூடிய வார்த்தைகளை வச்சு அவர் வந்து விளையாடிருப்பார். பட் ஆனால் அதை வந்து இங்கிலீஷை டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுறது கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டம். பட் ஆனால் வந்து பட் இஸ் எ வெரி குட் ஸ்டோரி அது.
Just want to add, because you're talking about, see, the whole point in one of the underlying things in translation, it enriches the language into which a text or a writer is moved. If you can't read that, well, like you said, there are audio books now. For a long time there have been audio books, and lots of people have switched to that. And then, I mean, it's so interesting. You might go back to the written word. It's the whole thing of orature is actually forgotten. And ours was a largely oral culture till about 120, 130 years ago, when printing was introduced by missionaries and by the English. The two arms of colonization was that, the English language and evangelism. So through that, the whole language and printing and publishing industry grew. They never thought it would, but that's what happened.
One more question to Mini ma'am. So looking to the future, what do you see as the most promising trend or development in the field of the translations?
I hope that it will be picked up in colleges and academia very seriously, because enough research has not been done into not only our languages and our literatures and writers, but the whole thing of translation itself is a neglected area. And it's crucial to a multilingual, multicultural society like ours. And before it, the whole thing just slides away. I was watching this, during the floods, you see whole houses being washed away. Our situation is actually very, very critical. That will happen if it's not picked up by students, by academia, and by scholars. Parallelly, there are these other powerful currents going on. So there is some hope. And also the first generation learners, they also bring a certain energy into it, and also the way language is used. Recently, Vaishna ran a story, not recently, about 6-7 months ago, translated from Telugu. The title story and the title of the book published by Mandira Sen, Stree, is How Are You Veg? How is it that you're a vegetarian? Would have been the formal way of asking. But the way we speak is, how are you veg? Like long ago, Subhashri wrote a story in which she said, tomorrow maths test, you don't say, do you have a test in mathematics tomorrow? No. So this, and the other thing is bringing this kind of thing into the Indian writing in English also. That's also happening. You see, what's his name? The man who wrote White Tiger, Adigal. He said, I'm reading Anantamurthy and some other writers, he said, to get the feel of the original cultural language, which he lost because he studied in Bangalore for 20 years and then went off to Australia, England. So there's that kind of, I don't want to use the word, that is scavenging in a good way, scavenging, eavesdropping, sort of mopping up from the original voices, what he can transmute when he writes in English. So there's a terrific fusion going on there, from here to here and from there to here, which is also what happened in our country. Religion, philosophy, all this went into Europe, and engineering, medicine, these things came here. Yes?
So while talking about the future of translation, I would like to add some point. So there are a lot of scope for the youngsters in the translation. We are, whenever madam suggests a translator name, we'll ask what is the age of the translator. Okay? Madam will suggest the translators of her age, 70s. So I used to, I will be happy madam suggests a translator of 30 or 40. Okay? Because the future lies with the young translators. So young translators has to learn how to translate. So we recently conducted CIBF, Chennai International Book Fair. So for that we went to Frankfurt. So International Book Fair. So Tamil Nadu government has sent a team. I was the part of the team. So where we see the translating agents. Okay. So writers will not come and talk for the translation rights. Translating agents come and they sell their copyrights. For that they are explaining what is the importance of that work. Okay. So that for that the communication of English is very much essential. So all the writers will not having that knowledge. So translating agent is one of the important writers. In CABF also, one important Tamil writer didn't get any translation copyright MOU, couldn't sign MOU because he didn't approach any translation agent. So translation agent is very much needed. Another thing is, madam is the editor. Whenever somebody translates, madam will find out the mistakes. Okay. Whenever the translation is come, I'll read. It seems to be good for me. But after it went to madam and comes, all will be readings. So many readings will be there. Okay. So then I learned that so many things to be done by an editor like that. Then I am only technical term expert. Okay. So whenever technical terms are coming, I particular about that. So what is the importance of the technical term, whether it is in Tamil or it is in pure Tamil, like that I have to look into. So I am a technical term expert. Like that, different kind of specialization is there in translation. So yeah.
Hello, sir. Actually, Chinese, Korean, Japanese literature has not been translated. That is a very loss and insult to world literature, because they have given the best films to the world. Definitely, they might have the greatest literature, and you should have a course like MA in translation in academic institutions. Thank you.
Right point.
தமிழ் இசை புக்கில் எல்லாம் பார்த்திங்கன்னா நிறைய இப்போ இந்த டெர்மினாலஜிஸ் வந்து நிறையா யூஸ் பண்ணுறாங்க. கமகம், அசைவு, இது மாதிரி பார்த்திங்கன்னா நிறைய வேர்ட்ஸ் இருக்குது. இந்த மாதிரி வேர்டெல்லாம் வந்து இப்போ இங்கிலீஷில் கன்வெர்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்களா?
ஈஸியாக
இங்கிலீஷில் கன்வெர்ட் பண்ணுறாங்களா? இந்த மாதிரி
இல்லை, அந்த மாதிரி சில வார்த்தைகள், ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் இப்போ தமிழிசை அகராதி மம்மது போட்டிருக்காரு இல்லையா? இப்போ அந்த மாதிரி சில வார்த்தைகள் வரும் பொழுது ஈக்குவலண்ட் வேர்ட்ஸ் நமக்கு கிடைக்காது. ஸோ அதனால் அந்த வார்த்தையவே போட்டு அதுக்கு ஃபுட் நோட் போடுறது அல்லது பின்னால் கிளாஸரியில் கொண்டு வர்றது அப்படிங்கிறது தான் பெஸ்ட்டு. இப்போ நாங்கள் கி ராஜநாராயண் ஸ்டோரிஸை பண்ணும்போது நிறைய வார்த்தைகள் கரிசல் வார்த்தைகள். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி டைலக்ட் வரும்போது அதில் உள்ள முக்கியமான வார்த்தைகளுக்கெல்லாம் எடிட்டர் வில் டிசைட். ஜென்ரலி இந்த வார்த்தையை டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ண முடியுமா, பண்ணால் ஓரளவுக்கு ஈக்குவலண்ட்டாக வருமா, பண்ண முடியலன்னா அந்த வார்த்தை அப்படி இட்டாலிக்ஸில் போட்டு, அதுதான் அந்த குருங்கிற வார்த்தை எப்படி இங்கிலீஷ் டிக்ஷனரிக்கு போச்சு அப்படின்னு மேடம் சொல்கிறாங்க இல்லையா, ஐயோ அப்படிங்கிற வார்த்தை அது எப்படி போச்சு. குஷ்வந்த் சிங் சொல்வார், எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச 2 வார்த்தை தமிழில், ஒன்று வணக்கம், இன்னொன்று ஐயோ அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவார். ஸோ அந்த ஐயோங்கிற வார்த்தை எப்படி போச்சு அப்படின்னா, தட் இஸ் ஃப்ரம் தட் ஒன்லி. கம்பரே பயன்படுத்தியிருக்காரு. ஐயோ இவன் வடிவென்பதோர் அடியா அழகுடையான் அப்படின்ட்டு கம்பரே ஐயோங்கிற வார்த்தையை பயன்படுத்தியிருக்காரு. ஸோ அந்த வார்த்தை வந்து நமக்கு போகுது அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு ப்ரைடு தான்.
இல்லை இப்போ இந்த ஐயாவோட வார்த்தைகள்லாம் வந்து காம்ப்ளிகேஷனா இல்லை பண்ண முடியாதா?
இல்லை பண்ண முடியாதுன்னு இல்லை, அந்த அவங்களுக்கு மியூசிக்கல் நாலேஜ் வேணும். இந்த லாங்குவேஜையும் அந்த லாங்குவேஜுக்குமான ரெண்டையும் தாளம் அப்படின்னா அதை வந்து அவங்க மியூசிக் இங்கிலீஷில் எப்படி சொன்னால் அவங்களுக்கு புரியும், ரெண்டு ஈக்குவலன் தானா அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரியான 2 நாலேஜும், மியூசிக்கல் நாலேஜ், இந்த வெஸ்டர்ன் மியூசிக்லேயும் நாலேஜ் இருக்கணும், தமிழ் மியூசிக்லேயும் நாலேஜ் இருக்கணும். அல்லது அப்படி உள்ள ஒருத்தர் வச்சுக்கணும், ஒருத்தர் வந்து எடிட்டராகவோ கோஆர்டினேட்டராகவோ கூட வச்சுக்கிட்டு அவரோட சேர்ந்து பண்ணோம்னா நம்ம பண்ணலாம்.
அப்படி இருக்கிறப்ப வந்து இந்த மொழி இப்போ இது வந்து நான் இப்போ ஒரு வேறு லாங்குவேஜுக்கு நான் ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ணுறேன் அப்படிங்கிறப்ப வந்து இது அவங்கள போய் சேராதில்லை. இப்போ நான் ஒரு விஷயத்தை சொல்ல வரேன் அப்படிங்கிறப்ப வந்து இப்போ தமிழிசை ஆய்வாளர் மம்முதோட வார்த்தைகளை வந்து என்னால் இங்கிலீஷில் ட்ரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ண முடியலன்னா இந்த இசையோட மொழி வந்து வேறு யாருக்கும் புரியாது.
இல்லை, அது கரெக்டு தான். நீங்கள் வந்து அதனால தான் என்ன சொல்கிறாங்க, மியூசிக்கு, இந்த பாட்டு, அவங்களெல்லாம் சாமுவேல் ஜான்சன் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காரு, ப்ரிசர்வர்ஸ் ஆஃப் லாங்குவேஜ்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. அந்த அவங்க வந்து இந்த லாங்குவேஜை ப்ரிசர்வ் பண்ணுறவங்க அவங்க தான். அது வந்து ஒன்லி தீம் கேன் பி டிரான்ஸ்லேட்டட், நாட் தி ஆக்சுவலி வாட் இஸ் தே ஆர் சேயிங். அது வந்து அப்படியே டிரான்ஸ்லேட் பண்ண முடியாது. டிரான்ஸ்லேஷன் இஸ் ஆல் அபவுட் அன் அட்ஜஸ்ட்மெண்ட், ரைட்டா? கொஞ்சம் விட்டு கொடுக்குற மாதிரி தான், அவ்வளோதான். வாழ்க்கையில் விட்டு கொடுத்தா கெட்டு போவதில்லைன்னு சொல்கிறோம் இல்லையா, அது டிரான்ஸ்லேஷனுக்கு பொருந்தும், அவ்வளோதான். அதை வந்து அப்படியே கொண்டு போக முடியாது. முகமது பண்ணியிருக்காரு, இது மாதிரி தமிழிசையில் பண்ணியிருக்காரு, சோன்ஸ் டெர்மினாலஜி ஈக்குவலண்டான டேர்ம்ஸ்லாம் இருக்குதுன்னு சொல்லியிருக்காரு. கர்நாடிக் மியூசிக் இதுதான் பேஸுன்னு சொல்கிறாரு, மருத பற்றி சொல்கிறாரு, இந்த காந்தாரம்ங்கிறது இதுதான் சொல்கிறாரு. அந்தந்த மாதிரி நீங்கள் என்னென்ன சொல்ல, இவ்வளோ மியூசிக் இன்ஸ்ட்ருமெண்ட் எல்லாம் லிஸ்ட் அவுட் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க. சிலப்பதிகாரத்தில் சோன் சோர்லாம் வருது. அது மாதிரி என்னென்ன சொல்ல முடியுமோ அதெல்லாம் சொல்லலாம், அவ்வளோதான்.
I just want to share something that Padma Sharma wrote in my introduction to her translation of Shivram Karan's 1941 work. Marali Mandige is the English translation of the title. It's a return to the soil or return home or something. She's return to the soil. She said in the original Kannada, Karan gave a list of 300 words in Kannada, because the things set in coastal Kannada, and explained them for his readers, the Kannada readership, those who may not be familiar with this dialect. So when we talk about Malayalam or Tamil, see, there are so many Malayalams in that Malayalam. There are so many, so just keep that also in mind, and that adds to the pressure and the challenge, yes, complexity on the part of the translator's work. Right.
2 days back I mentioned one incident to Madam. Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So he mentioned once, while paying tribute to one of his translators, when he passed away, one of his translators passed away, in his tribute, he is saying, he is the only translator, he never gave any footnote to my original work. So that is a translator's efficiency.
Thank you then. We'll close, and thank you so much to the panelists for a wonderful and informative discussion.